In this video, I want to talk about LED pods. So I do have a few pods here, mostly going to be focusing on addressable pods since that is the majority of what we do. But I did want to show you guys one new product that we have in, and that is our Switchback Pods. Now, the purpose of these would be to put on the end of like an acrylic tube inside of a light. Let's say you have a set of lights that normally the acrylic is for your DRLs and you want to add a turn signal function to that as well. This would be a great go-to for that. Really high output, just the right size to put on the end of that acrylic tube. The only real factor is just the PCB itself due to the amount of heat that the LED creates. It is a little bit on the larger side, measuring in at about 25 by 25 millimeters. Yeah, 25 by 25, so that does fit a lot of applications. I would say in cases like the charger where the two acrylic rods come down together at the same point, that does create a little bit of a bottleneck, but most lights you don't really run into that. So it just depends. The Kia K5s, if you were trying to do it, that's kind of the same deal where they kind of tuck right at the same point in the middle. But other than that, most of them, they work pretty well. You put one on each side of the rod. We do sell them by the pair, so you get two per order. And in most cases, you know, if you want the maximum output, you're going to want to have an LED on each side, so you'd probably want to get two sets. So you would get four total, one for left, right, one for right light. But on those rare occasions where you only need one, maybe it's a shorter tube or something, and you just don't need a full length, you can do that. The output is quite good. It's, you know, as I say with everything, this is on camera, exposures and everything the way that it is. Just keep that in mind. But the output is quite bright, as well as that turn signal function on there does work quite well. I'm seeing spots right now. It's bright. Those are available on the website, and you know, we'll see how they go. If they do gain in popularity, we'll definitely make sure to keep them on hand. So now let's get to the interesting stuff. I have a bunch of addressable pods here, and basically a pod is just like a single LED. So whereas normally you might have a strip, you might have a halo, you might have a grouping of LEDs, pod is generally more of just for controlled installation of LEDs. If you want to have focused LEDs in certain points, cases would be certain lights that you might have little spots for LEDs across the light. These are perfect for that. Also, some of these that we have are really good for lights with acrylic instead of a rod that runs through. There's a lot of lights now that are using like the Teslas, the Camaros, the newer Camaros. They have these acrylic plates with about 7 spots for LEDs that shine it forward through the acrylic diffuser. Some of these work better than others for different applications, and it definitely depends on what you're doing with it as to which application is best for you. We're just going to start off with the 5mm. Now, these are our traditional 5mm. We offer them in RGBW and RGB formats, and that is a GRBW color order on the RGBW, and that is an RGB color order on the RGB version. This is using our 100-piece PCB boards that are available on the website as well, and installing them inside with wires in between. I've done this quite a few on different builds, especially in the RGBW right now. It does come in handy because there's a lot of applications where you need something kind of like this, like a little bit of a through-hole design on a set of lights that might already have a couple holes already. These work really well for that, and you can see it's not too hard to assemble. The boards are a little bit small, but there is some assembly required to make everything. Once again, we do not sell them in this format exactly. We sell the parts for you to be able to make this yourself, and it's pretty cost effective to sell the parts to you versus trying to create strips like this and sell it. It would be quite expensive. It's not hard to make it yourself, and in most applications, if you're using this, you probably only need like maybe a dozen LEDs. Probably not much more than that, but to give you an idea of the actual output of them. Now this is the RGB version, so I'm going to go into the app here and change that out. There is the red, green, blue, kind of gives you a little bit of an idea as to the output itself. And once again, if you are familiar with our 5mm LEDs, that is what these are. So you know the output levels of those. And I will be doing a side-by-side comparison just to kind of give you guys an idea with the addressable options that we have and the kind of comparative output that you can expect to get from them. Definitely has its place depending on the circumstances of the build that you're doing. This is a good option for many applications. Next up, kind of along the same lines, is the 5mm headliner LEDs. Now, like, I've done one headliner so far. I will be doing more in the future, but it is pretty involved for those of you that have tried it so far. Headliner with these is pretty rough to build, but I will say it's been super reliable. I've had it on my car now for at least 2 years, and it has held up really well. I haven't had any problems. I haven't had to drop the headliner. I haven't had to redo anything. So they're super reliable. They work really well, especially if you know, like everything, you do the install right the first time. It'll last you for years. But yeah, a lot of work. So with these, they are molded, the 5mm, same stuff that we sell. So you can see the brightness is identical. It's the same LED. The difference is these are already encased in a plastic molding with the wires ran between. One small caveat, and this was mostly due to weight, the wiring is extremely thin. We are on the next batch going to add JST inputs. That was something we didn't do last time, but we're absolutely going to do it this time. And that way it'll be easier out of the bag, just open them up and use them. But when it comes to actually cutting and using other sections, because these are sold by a 50 LED strand, there is a little bit involved, but you can see on the website it does show you the color of each wire and what each wire does. And you can, just like I did here, you can attach a JST to the end of it and it'll work fine. There's just a few extra steps, like you do have to burn off that color coating. I use a soldering iron myself, and you can see it burn off. Pretty much you know that it's burn off when it takes solder. So if you try to solder it and the solder sticks, you're good. If you try to solder it and it won't stick, you still got to burn more of that stuff off. So I go a little bit more detail on that in the headliner video itself if you want to see a little bit more of how to work with these. But both of these are great go-tos, and it definitely depends on circumstance. I would say for me, for the most part, if I'm using these PCBs, I'm doing it with the RGBW, and that's only because we have not yet done the RGBW in this format. And we will at some point. We have had some requests, so it will happen at some point. But yeah, as with everything, money, economy, the way things are, we can only develop so much stuff at a time. So that is a little bit of a back burner thing, but we definitely still want to try to get to it. Up next is another very popular format of the LEDs, and that is our 5-volt pods. Now, these are UCS2904. You guys are very familiar with those. The output is really good. It's better than the SKs. You'll see SKs and I think even WS2812s online, and relatively cheap, but the output's just not the same as the UCS is. These are 5-volt though, UCS typically being a 12-volt, but these are one LED per PCB, so it is just a 5-volt LED. But as you can see, the output is quite good. Now, of course, being RGBW versus the RGB of the other two here, the color is a little bit off there, but the output is definitely superior to that of the 5mm. So, definitely, once again, application is going to play a role here as to what is better for you and whatever build you're working on. Moving on to the next one in the lineup. Now, this one's a little bit less popular, but for some reason it seems to be growing in popularity a little bit. If you guys want us to keep these on, definitely let me know, because we're starting to run low. But honestly, I bought these like 4 years ago. They were kind of a flop to begin with. It didn't seem like anybody wanted them. Now they're starting to pick up a little bit, so I don't know. I'm on the fence about ordering more just because of how long it took to get through them all. I don't use them myself because it seems like it's more application specific. But one nice thing, these are waterproof. They are IP68. You can totally submerge them in water, just keeping in mind that we did go with the standard JST connections on them, but they themselves are actually waterproof. Now, these do have lenses built onto the LEDs. It is a 12-volt LED, and as you can see here, I do have it ran into my little splitter harness here, but I do have to inject power separately, and we did that. It was along the same lines as our old 12-volt Demon Eyes, the idea of trying to be as plug-and-play as possible with keeping the 12-volt connection separate so that you could just tap 12-volt and run it in line with the 5-volt. If we bring them back out, we may just go ahead and tap that power and ground directly into the JSTs. Kind of undecided at this point. I don't know if we even bring them back at all. But just keep that in mind. If you do get these, the power and ground pigtails coming off do have to be ran to 12-volt power. And then the JST can be 12-volt or 5-volt. It won't matter because the power just passes by the LED. But it does use 3 UCS2904 LEDs. It is IP68, so So it's a pretty good output. The applications are going to be a little bit more selective. So that's going to be the biggest thing. It just depends. This is probably really good for some kind of a external application on a car, just because of how they are waterproof itself. But you know, hey, get creative. That's what this is all about. If there's an application where this fits, by all means, go ahead and use it. Yeah, on the fence if we're going to bring this back or not. It is still available as of right now, but the inventory is a little bit low. So definitely, if this is something you guys really want and you want me to keep it on board, please let me know so that I know whether or not it's worth my time even keeping it in stock. Now, last up is a little bit of a newcomer. I've had this on the site for probably like 6 months or so, maybe a little bit more, but I definitely haven't really touched base on it too much. It's really a shame because the output is really good on this stuff. This is like your cream of the crop. You got somebody that's got some money and they want performance. This is it. These are, kind of give you comparatively, these are about 12 milliamp per color per diode. The same on these. These are about 17 milliamps per diode. These are 17 as well, but 3 LEDs, so a little better output. These are about 150 milliamp per diode. So, and that is once again per diode. You got to be careful with a lot of the terminology out there. Some people will add all the diodes together and say that is what their collective output is. Typically, the way that the industry marks this stuff, it's per diode. So each diode puts out so many milliamps of power, and that is kind of a comparative of really more so the amount of power it draws. And that does not mean that it will be brighter or not. Like case in point, the UCS2904. Well, UCS2904 has an IC chip. That is what it is. It's just this little chip on the back that controls an LED. Think of it like an LED driver. And the LED that you match to it can be anything. We actually developed these LEDs ourselves to try to squeeze as much out of that 17 milliamps as possible. Now, in our readings, we see versus the typical UCS, we see an output increase of about 13%. So, I mean, it's hard to see necessarily, but the extra is there. And, you know, in our opinion, it was worth it because of just how much we deal with UCS. It was worth the cost and the investment to develop a slightly better output. But this is an example where, you know, milliamps doesn't always mean anything, because you might find another UCS product online somewhere where they're using a lower output LED. And it's not going to be drastic, but there will be a little bit of a difference on that output, as well as potentially the reliability of the LED, even though I haven't really noticed that myself, but that potential always exists as well. Well, comparatively, as you can tell, we have better output on the 17 than we do the 12. Slightly better with the optics and 3 LEDs than the regular 17. And then obviously when you step up from a 17 milliamp clear up to 150, it's pretty substantial. So I'll go ahead and plug this in. These are 5-volt LEDs. And typically, if you have one LED on the face of the chip, it will be a 5-volt. There are some exceptions to that, but not a ton. Like our old Demon Eyes are an exception to that. But once again, it's definitely not the norm. So here they are side by side. You can get a little better idea of just kind of the output that these are putting out. And it is quite a bit. It's a lot of power coming through these things. And they are very bright in the right application. Once again, I've done these in the chargers myself. And it's not too bad because generally in those kind of applications, you only need like 7 LEDs per light. We sell these as strands of 5. I believe they're right around $90 for a strand of 5. Dealer discounts do apply. But, you know, in the end, we're talking about output. You know, everything is about doing the best that you can with what you do. If you leave anything on the table when you build a light, you build something else, you run the risk that somebody else is going to get business that you might have gotten if you built something better. So that's kind of always been the focus. We don't focus on being the cheapest. We focus on being the best here at Next Level Neo. And that's kind of the point. Now, we do offer cheaper solutions and cheaper options that we trust and believe in. And a lot of that has to do, too, with the application. This is going to fit in places that this is not. Not to mention the cost. You know, I can't imagine trying to do a headliner with 1,000 of these. That would be quite expensive. Whereas these can be a lot more affordable. And in case of a headliner, you don't need it to be as bright. So everything is application based and just figuring it out. But I would tell you right now, if it was a headlight and I had a choice between these and these, those are going in the headlight. And once again, cost is definitely a factor and something that you have to talk to the customer about and figure it out. But, you know, when you look at it, bottom line, the output, it's significant. If you can push the customer to do a little bit more, it can help you in the long run. That's something that I've always found myself a lot anymore, because I kind of look at my builds now more as a portfolio. I don't generally want to build stuff with cheaper parts if I don't have to. And so, you know, once again, nothing wrong with this kind of LED, but if it's an application where this is going to fit, I push pretty hard to get the customer to go ahead and do the upgrade, because the output is so much better. Now, it depends on the application. Absolutely. There's not every application where that's going to work or that's even necessary. There's plenty of applications where it's not. But this should give you guys a pretty good idea of the lineup and just kind of the tiers as far as pods go of what to expect between them. Now, to give you guys a little bit of a comparative between the two, this is the high output RGBW. This is our switchback pod that I showed at the beginning of this video. And comparatively speaking, they're pretty close. Like, this is more. This is more. Don't in person, you can definitely see this is more. But this is pretty good too. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the perfect LED set for doing acrylic rods, but if you have a customer that really wants to have like addressable with a rod, it's an option. It's a way that you can go. And, you know, in most applications, I do think you'll probably be able to see it. But, you know, in direct sunlight, it's really bright outside. It may be a little bit difficult with the addressable versus that. But, you know, if you have other forms of DRLs and the customer's not too worried about it, it probably work pretty well. But in general, I usually use it on those special acrylics where they have LEDs behind them from the factory. Another example would be the Toyota Camry XSE lights for the 2018 to 2024 models. Those have those jewels inside of them, and behind those, there's, I believe it's like 9 LEDs behind each side, so you would need a total of 18, so you need about like 5 kits. But if you want to match OEM level output, these would do that very well. Very bright, and they would definitely do that. I think in one of my recent videos, I actually used these, which also do a good job. But once again, if I have something available that does even better, I'm going to upgrade to that. And in the case of these, without a doubt, this is going to be OEM level, probably edge it out a little bit and be even brighter for that application. So it's definitely application specific as to which one best fits your needs. And, you know, by all means, I always recommend people to try multiple formats of these type pods, strips, everything that we sell, and just determine what fits you best and what fits the application best, because there really is no one LED that fits everything. And that's something that a lot of people ask me, hey, I'm building a set of lights, what LEDs should I get? And it's like, well, I'm going to have to ask you a whole bunch of questions because it's not that simple. It depends on the circumstance. But that is our lineup of pods. And, you know, I'm sure that as time goes on, we'll come up with some new pods, new high output options on the market as well. But I think what we have right now fits just about every application I've needed so far. So definitely worth checking out. All this stuff is available on the website. Definitely look forward to some of the stuff we have coming down the line. We are working on moving to a bigger shop. Hopefully that happens this year. We will see how that goes. A lot of really cool stuff coming down the line once that does happen. Thanks, guys. If you enjoyed this video or it helped you in any way, you can check out a lot of our other videos on our tutorial playlist on our YouTube channel. Definitely reach out if you have any questions, and I will do my best to answer them as they come in. Thanks.